me now. Okay, so you conducted your own investigation into the Sony hacking, and you have determined that it was an inside job involving Sony employees. So who do you say did this, and what facts and evidence do you have that brings you to this conclusion?
Hi, Don. Thanks. So when we look at this, we look at motive, right? And what's important to note, based on our investigation, is that the date that we have nailed in terms of when data was moved off of Sony and was far earlier than the timeline that has been revealed so far. And our date points to October 21st. And when we look at the over 100 terabytes of data that was moved off, which is an incredible amount of data, there was quite a bit of information, HR-related information, that was included in that release of files. So what we saw was that there were a few suspects that we had been looking at that were not included in that release of information, and these suspects have, at least one, had ties to and critical knowledge of Sony systems, IP addresses, credentials, etc., and also had motive for being what I would say it would be upset at Sony due to reorganization that happened within the department, as well as sympathetic to the community in terms of Sony's work to combat
so Sam,
piracy.
So what you're saying is because of the time and all the information that was gained by the hackers, you believe it was an inside job by an employee. So then, where does North Korea play into this? When did they become involved?
Sure. So we believe North Korea was involved, but not until after the data was moved off of Sony's premise. Now, does that mean that North Korea was working with the attackers and the hacker groups pre-incident or post-incident? We believe it was after. We don't see any evidence that today that North Korea was the driver of the movement of the data off. So we would see North Korea as a beneficiary of the information that was lifted off of the network.
Okay, Sam. So then let's make this concise for our viewers. So you believe October 21st is when the first information was removed from Sony's system, correct?
Correct.
By who you say it was an employee, right?
That's correct. A former employee.
A former employee. Okay. So then you say that North Korea was the beneficiary of that information that was taken. So if it was October 21st when the first information was stolen, then when did Sony? What was the date that Sony became involved?
Sony, December 2nd, I believe, was when.
I'm sorry, when North Korea.
Announced.
Sorry, and North Korea became involved.
It was in early December was when the breach was announced. We believe North Korea, because the first demand that came from the attackers was a ransom demand. It was nothing around the movie The Interview. So it was 1 to 2 weeks post December 2nd, so call it early to mid-December, when North Korea took advantage of the situation, was able to benefit from the data that was released.
Are you saying did the employee sell the information to North Korea? What are you saying here? How did they become involved?
We don't know. That part of the investigation, we're continuing our work, but I don't know how North Korea tied themselves to the original leakers. But this is a community of hackers that has a long reach, and it would not be impossible at all for North Korea to involve and provide guidance to those that had lifted the data and be able to perhaps influence their messaging.
Okay. So as I understand, today you met with the FBI. Can you tell us about that meeting?
We've provided our initial findings to the FBI, and will continue to provide law enforcement with our information.
Okay. So what are the next steps here?
So the next steps for Norse is really to do two things. One, we want to help educate enterprises that the insider threat is a very real one, and one that should be taken seriously. And the second is to provide the complete data set to law enforcement so that they can run that through their traps and confirm what we believe to be really the drive and the motivation for the attack, and that's what law enforcement is here for, and we're simply providing information that we have based on our research.
So what do you say to your detractors, those who those who question your theory?
To those, I would say that we are very good at this work. We're in the business of security intelligence, and I think one needs to take a step back and just look at what actually happened with respect to the timeline, and if the movie The Interview was the driver for this hack, why wasn't it part of the initial demand from the attackers? Why was the initial demand money? And why was the information taken really designed to embarrass Sony and cripple Sony versus something that would be more typical for a nation